it's a small political risk here for the government. They're assuming that it'll go into voluntary administration and we'll find buyers and we'll still be a two-airline country. But there is some risk in that. And one assumes that could be a way off until we see flights again before you'd see that sort of interest. There were hopes after Ansett collapsed, Laura, in 2001 that a similar thing would happen. It took ages and, you know, we had very expensive airfares in Australia and people will fear that. But there does seem a bit of a trend for the government to want to do more for small and medium business than for big business. And they're particularly focused on calling this a foreign company. Josh Frydenberg again yesterday wanting to point out specifically that a Chinese company had a stake in this company. So, you know, I don't know how it will be received if there's no buyer. If there ends up being a buyer down the track, it's all good. You know, the government will have been proven to do the right thing, but they might have some political concerns around it if the thing just goes under altogether.
Yeah, Andrew, it is a pretty high-stakes game of chicken, as you put it, really, because looking at history, Ansett went into voluntary administration. It was still 6 months before its eventual collapse. So there is a tight time frame here. If we are left with, you know, something like just a one dominant airline in Qantas, well, the government would have to look at regulating prices. So, you know, at both ends there, the philosophical baseline kind of thinking around this from this Conservative Liberal government, well, neither option is very good.
No, well, that's right. And taking an equity stake would have been exceedingly controversial, but these are unusual times. As I say, I mean, yeah, they're taking a gamble. They're hoping and seeing that there are sort of nibbles around with interest in taking over the airline, so they're very much hoping that occurs. I mean, their position's kind of clear. And Cormann and Morrison, I think, are strongest on this. That is that they don't mind seeing Virgin go under, but they want to see two airlines in this country.
Yep. Absolutely. And look, Virgin has been in trouble for quite some time as well before COVID-19, but this seemed to be, you know, something that tipped it over the edge. Let's turn our attention now to National Cabinet. It will meet today. Elective surgery on the table. That is going to resume in a staggered way on a case-by-case basis. And as the AMA said this morning, it comes down to a number of things, including the number of new infections, the PPE equipment that is available, all safe to resume some of those low-risk surgeries, Andrew.
Yeah, I mean, that's a welcome development. Why should people be at home in pain, not having elective surgery, when we're just not seeing the ICU uptake that was predicted, where the shutdowns have been so effective that far from the hospitals being overrun, it's in the opposite direction. So, I mean, there's less cars on the road, there's less cases of trauma from car accidents in the public system, and in the private system they were told to shut down elective surgery for COVID-19, and they just haven't seen the uptake in cases. So it's a welcome move.
Absolutely. That meeting underway at 10 a.m, so we should hear from the Prime Minister and the Chief Medical Officer early afternoon. Andrew, let's talk Malcolm Turnbull. He's described the right wing of his own party as acting like terrorists. This is not the first time he's used that descriptor, by the way, but let's hear from him.
The way the right wing operates in the Liberal Party, and this is something Morrison has to confront, by the way, because they would do exactly the same to him if they thought they could. The way they operate is to basically bully and intimidate people. And what they do, they operate like a terrorist. Now, they don't use guns and bombs, I hasten to add, but it is the technique of terrorism where you create enough mayhem, enough damage, that people in the middle say, it's got to come to an end. How can I stop this terrible horror?
Hindsight brings a lot of clarity, particularly for former Prime Ministers. But, Andrew, what do you make of what you've seen of the book and Malcolm Turnbull's reflections from that particular week and his time in politics?
Well, chaos theory is what all political operatives use to bring on a spill. It's certainly not unique to the right wing of the Liberal Party. Of the book, there's a lot of axe grinding in it. You read Bob Hawke's autobiography, there's a lot of I achieved this and I achieved that. Some people thought Bob Hawke exaggerated but on a couple of things. But where's the achievements in this book? You know, it's all about, oh, this guy did me over, this guy did me over. And, you know, I think it's important to point out that there were two reasons Malcolm Turnbull was rolled. One is that despite what he says, his colleagues didn't think he could win the election. And the other is they didn't particularly like him. And, you know, he's the one who says arithmetic's everything in politics. Well, that party room was the case. And, you know, him blaming News Corp, I mean, that's just crazy. Is this the new way now for all leaders to blame journalists and blame editors for their own demise? You know, if a party room's leaking to us, unhappy with the boss, are we supposed to not report it? Are we supposed to just be state-run media and do the talking points? I want to point this out in particular, Laura. In the seat of Longman, in that by-election, if Malcolm Turnbull had won Longman or Braddon, he would probably still be Prime Minister, frankly. He didn't. So that made his colleagues think he couldn't win the election. In Longman, he got 30% of the vote, that's all. There was a fear from that he couldn't win Queensland. Scott Morrison won by 2 seats. Where did he win it? Queensland. What seats did he win amongst the ones he got back? Longman and Braddon. I mean, the proof is in terms of the actual result. And even people close to Turnbull have said to me that there's no way Malcolm Turnbull could have communicated as clearly or campaigned as well as Scott Morrison did in last year's election.